You're listening to Biz-Souls, the business podcast with an edge, hosted by me, Rona Lewis, and Jeffrey Hansler. Tune in for perspectives and discoveries about the changing world of business. It's time to connect to the heart, soul, and humor of how business gets done. Hello, everyone in podcast land. Welcome to Biz-Souls. I'm Rona Lewis.
I'm Jeffrey Hansler, and we get to the heart and soul of business and the people that make it happen. And today we have the Dr. Drew Davidson.
Another Dr. Drew.
No, the Dr. Drew Davidson. The other guy's Dr. Drew.
That's true. The other's
Come on.
That's right. Sorry, get with the program.
Stay with it.
And yes, and he's another play person, sorta, kinda. I'm going to read you his bio so I don't mess anything up. Drew Davidson is a professor, producer, and player of interactive media. His background spans academic, industry, and professional worlds, and he is interested in stories and transformational experiences across texts, comics, games, and other media. He explores art, design, and science of making media that matters, working to expand our notions of what media are capable of doing and what we are capable of doing with media. He is an expert in leading creative collaboration with interdisciplinary groups, orchestrating change, and building initiatives focused on making positive social impact. He is a teaching professor at the Entertainment Technology Center at Carnegie Mellon University and is the founder and editor-in-chief of Play Story Press, where my book is now, an open community publishing consortium, and the Well Played series and journal. Welcome, Drew. That was a mouthful.
Thanks, Rona.
That was Carnegie Mellon. God, you can get lost in that place. That's outstanding. Oh, yeah. You know, they used to be very serious. Have they changed? They've changed. They're now more playful because of you?
There's like a mix in there. We could talk about that. There's interesting dynamics around, and I'm sure you too, you know, if you get, play can feel transgressive and a little threatening. So sometimes there's a bit of a way to try to put it over there. It's like, oh, you do that playful stuff. That's not real stuff, you know.
You have to be serious in life, miserable.
It has
awful,
to be serious
evil.
Life, right?
Exactly.
But it's Harvard, their business school, and they have in Harvard Business Review, and they're starting to write more about play, which is really interesting. Mm-hmm. So
if they only
go ahead, Jeffrey.
If they only followed their own advice.
That's right. If they only followed their advice. Good point. Touche.
Anyway, Dr.
Drew
Davidson. So what did you want to be when you grew up? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, my stars. I'll be honest. I can't really think of like one driving thing where I'm like, oh, I have to be that. I was like fortunate that one of the things that my parents did when I was younger is they were like, you know, you have to earn allowance to buy toys, but we'll buy you books.
Oh, nice.
So both my sister and I became big readers.
Right.
Because we're like, oh, we can go to the bookstore and get books. And so books became like toys for us.
Right.
So a big thing like that they did almost, and they read with us and they asked about stuff, and they were very good about like pointing us towards like nonfiction type things, so we were learning as well as storytelling. And so I feel like there was just like this curiosity set in from the start about just like exploring avenues and having this sort of openness of what could be. Now, my dad was an ophthalmologist who was working in his dad's practice. So there was a bit of a hope / expectation that I'd go on to college. And then like my mom's dad was the dean of the medical school. So it's like, oh, he's going to go become a doctor too. And he'll take over the practice just like he did. You know, my dad did from his father. And man, organic chemistry put an end to that.
Oh my God. Brothers from different mothers. Exactly. Right. Mother wanted me to be a doctor. The closest I got was bad handwriting. Your parents wanted you to be an ophthalmologist. Closest you got was wearing glasses. And organic chemistry was the death of me.
Oh, I took that. I was like, why would I want to? And then I was like I was at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. It was back in the 80s. And it was a really good general education, so it's kind of easy to change majors. I'd probably changed majors like 8 times. So it's sort of
Didn't every college?
I was gravitating towards good professors, basically.
Right. Well, you have a wide variety of background and knowledge, which is good, especially in today's world. Today's world.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So how did you get into play from everything?
I would say what happened was at the, on various levels. There was the sort of like the cultural stuff happening in the 80s where like we had a home computer. So it's like, oh, we can play with games. And, this is, we had an Apple II and it's sort of like, oh, I could learn a little basic and make a game. And at the same time, sports, if you knew North Carolina back then, it was college basketball and pretty much that was it. Or sort of like locally. So we were really tracking what was going on. I actually got to talk to Michael Jordan once, which is a lot of fun back in the day. But so like kind of getting into that. And then when I was moving on from like undergrad, I sort of gravitated towards like a communications major where I focused on performance and rhetoric. I was really curious about how things happened ephemerally when you were like going to a performance or seeing a sporting event or going to a concert and like it blows your mind. And so like you had to be there kind of thing. And so I went on to get my master's and that started getting into like, could you do scholarly work across media and not just textually? And my professors were really supportive going, yeah, we could do that. Where the grad school was like, where's your paper? Turn in a paper if you want to graduate. And so that kind of like got me thinking about how to play with media, how to use media to communicate what it was hoping to be scholarly things, but I was definitely having to be playful around, the rules of what it means to do scholarship, and like both in terms of like thinking about it as a field, but the just sort of like you better check these boxes if you want to graduate. We want a paper and it's got to be bound in 100% cotton paper. And they had this whole process back in the day. So it's going through that.
Probably the same now. They
everybody
they're still fighting.
A little bit more like you can do stuff digitally.
Right, absolutely.
And then that led me to like games. I was very curious about computers and how they were changing what we were doing. And so then I was curious about games. I'll date myself. I was studying Myst, that old CD-ROM game.
I played Myst. I remember Myst. It was like a never-ending game.
Yeah, it was so much. It was such great. So like that got me into like, well, how do you use these things to tell stories in unique ways, create experiences where we feel like we have agency and stuff, and that really headed me in that direction. And those studies led me into doing what I was starting to do, dissertation interviews. Like I want to talk to people who are making games to get their sense of that, and those sort of dissertation interviews turned into job interviews where they're like, you have interesting ideas. Would you like to hire on? And it made so much more money than being a grad student. So I hired into like the game media industry in Austin, Texas. So like I got my PhD at the University of Texas, Austin.
Wow, there's a switch. North Carolina to Texas. That's a heck of a switch.
Yeah, that was a drive.
And then, hi, we're leaving one country and
Austin's
heading
a
to
really
an
hip
entirely
city,
different. What, Austin
Yes,
now?
Austin's great.
Very
And
hip.
so much good food.
Yes.
It's gotten too big for its infrastructure.
Well,
Like, it's so
especially
popular.
since the pandemic, they had a whole bunch of people move there.
Well, wait a second. When were you there? Because it's, the last 25, 30 years it's come out. Before that, though, were you there when like?
I was like 95 to 2000.
It was just beginning then.
94, 95.
It was still,
It was smaller.
yeah.
for sure.
Downtown
it was-
Austin was, they had like two buildings.
Yeah.
No, I'm only kidding.
And a stoplight.
Well, when I
2 buildings, 4
when
bars.
I lived there, no building was allowed to be taller than the Capitol. It was one of the states that had that
Right.
regulation, and that's gone now. So there's these huge skyscrapers in Austin that were against the law back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very good. So you've got, stories by, for, by, of, and for the fields of play, and that was fascinating. So tell me about what you did with that, and how.
So
What
I
does
was
it
just really curious. Yeah, right. I was really curious to talk to anybody from anywhere just about how they thought play related to their work or their careers, their interests, their life. And so that led to me talking to some people from all over the world, from all different places, like musicians and athletes and play coaches and therapists and, theater people and game designers. And that where at first I was like, the field of play. And that's like, it's sort of like fields. It's like play is this wonderful amorphous, you kind of know it when you see it, one of the interviews that I was doing, they said this thing. It's like it's really hard to pin down, but it's like it's undescribable when you're in it, in that sort of play and flow state of things are just going so wonderfully in that moment. And so that led me to go like, there's a lot of people from all over who feel playful. So it felt like there's these fields of play, and I also felt somewhat, like punny in that, there's like the playing fields, things like that.
Right.
Building
Well,
like
and then
Hold on.
and then of
But I'm
course,
bummed.
right, and then
I know.
Kevin Costner came by, and next thing you know, it's Field of Dreams.
Yeah,
So
if you build it, they
He
will
stole
come.
it from you. So,
if you
did
play it, they will come.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
right.
Are you seeing overlaps? Is there a theme that you found? Like what is I don't know if you can, like legally
Yeah.
say. Oh, so what,
Oh,
what,
yeah, totally.
What did you,
Like-
what are your findings?
They all do drugs.
So I was very curious.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. Like I'm very curious to do it qualitatively. I'm interested in the stories, the things that people shared. Like Rona, I interviewed Rona for this, and she shared like how she relates to play, and it was it's sort of orthogonal with Rona. No, I'm joking. So it's like I'm really curious, like looking at those patterns and the themes that come across and stuff like that. So as I went back through the interviews, and at first I was like, I'll do a couple dozen interviews and I'll do a survey. And I did a survey, and I did 176 interviews.
Wow.
So they sort of, I was on sabbatical, so I had the time, and people were offering their time, and they were inspirational. They were fun. Like talking to Rona for an hour was like, well, that was the best part of my day. My wife would always say, like,
I gave him $10.
you would always come down the stairs just like full of energy from these interviews. So I just kept them going, but then that meant I had to reread them, and then I was coding them, looking for those themes and those threads. And so things that have come out that's really interesting, like I kind of expected this, but like improv comes up a lot. A lot of people think about that. A thing that seems to be fairly across the board is like this openness. People have this openness to opportunity, to ideas, to failure. And I've been sort of I'm allowing the study to sort of manifest itself. I didn't want to like force people to like, oh, here's what I mean by play and what do you think? I just go, tell me what you think play is. And it's kind of grown into or evolved into this idea in my head of like a thematic oral history where, like, for instance, a lot of people talk about improv, so let's look at that and unpack that a little, and then pull quotes. Rona said this and Jill said that and Terry said this, and like really show the conversation. And I started doing that, and a couple things that have been fascinating in terms of like the process that's kind of blown my mind is at first I'm like, well, let me go through the codes. Like I really want to make sure I have a section on improv, for example. People talk a lot about other stuff, but that just comes to mind. A lot of people talked about music. A lot of people who are musicians, they're like, feels like one of the most unbelievable play states when you're with a group of people playing music together. Everybody just sort of like says that takes them somewhere, different, new, beyond that sort of jamming. And so I was like looking for that. And so I was chasing through the codes going, can I find stuff to sort of pull together a section that feels like it's really representing how people feel about improv from these interviews. And then I started going, well, hold on, I want to make sure, just in my mind, sort of like I had 176 people. I want to make sure like I get the best of what Rona said. And so I started going through by interview and just going, well, what are the like, where's the panning for gold? It's like, sort of like, where's the great stuff from her interview? And just sort of then sprinkling that going, well, she said that, and that's like improv, and she said that, and that feels like it's about collaboration. And I started doing that. And then as I was moving quotes around, if I put them, they would just change meaning based on wherever I put them. And it was almost like I could put them anywhere and they would mean something or something, slightly different. So if I put a quote with Rona right beside something that Jeffrey just said, it was like, oh, that's really great. But what if I flip it and put it over here with Jill? It's like, oh my God, that's even better. So I've been having this weird, like, palimpsest of like just sort of shifting things. I know. It's killing me how much fun I'm having. And it slowed me down a little because I'm like, well, let's do I want to make the most and honor like the time and the energy and the expertise people like Rona shared in these interviews. And so it's sort of like I'm trying to go through this sort of like really carefully to like really pull that out. And the thing that, not to like get too deep, but the thing that's just, I feel like the biggest lesson I've had is like, if we're going to get out of this dumpster fire, we're going to do it through play. Yeah. Because every time I talk to somebody or if I go through this stuff, and it just gives me hope. And it just like there's people like that out there doing this work and that's the only way we're going to do something new or different. We have to be playful about it and come at it from ways that we haven't before and meet people who know different things than us and feel comfortable enough to do things together that, that's the generative knowledge I'm interested in more than generative AI. I'm interested in like, what can we generate together when I get a musician together with Rona, with somebody who's a scuba diver who also, I talked to somebody about surfing. It was a really interesting answer. I asked them about surfing because I knew they surfed and they thought I said suffering. So they went on this really interesting answer about how suffering relates to play. And I was like, I don't know where they're going with this, but this is interesting.
Well, if you have hair on your
chest. And then we kind of figured it out. I was like, I said surfing. And he's like, oh.
That's funny.
Well,
and by the way, Jeffrey surfs.
If you have hair on your chest and you get on a board because they cover it with wax or stick, you are suffering. Yeah, it's a lot of suffering. So it really gets you. So wait a second. This is fascinating. You triggered a thought. So one of the things that you talk about getting out this mess we're in, and what it's generating is fear, and people are afraid, and then they try and control it and squeeze it and do all these things to it. So as a kid, though, it's really weird. I always think your subconscious, God, whatever you want to talk to, is trying to get you on this journey. That we're here for a journey and trying to get you on a journey, and. I would have opportunities and I'd almost self-destruct. I wouldn't practice for them or do certain things for them. And it was almost as if my subconscious mind was saying, you have to get over fear. And I don't care how many times you do it. You just have to get over the fear for it. So when somebody's in sports, they choke because they're afraid they're going to do something wrong. And so the antithesis of that is play. And if you just go at it, and so for the last 15, 20 years, I've been just going at failure. It's just like, okay, yeah, next, just keep doing it. It's one of the things, whether anybody likes him or not. Elon, he's not afraid to fail. Oh yeah, $500 million, boom, it's gone. Okay, whatever. We'll pick up the pieces and do something else. And I think that's what's going to get us through this. And if you take it that way, it becomes very playful. That, we messed up. Okay, let's play again. Like we used to do when we were kids. Somebody would break a rule or do something wrong and you wouldn't, punish them. Everybody kind of laugh and you'd move on or you'd add that rule to the game and everybody just have more fun with it. So
well, and that's Jeffrey, you hit the nail on the head. That's you mentioned improv, Drew. It's one of the tenets is featuring failure. That's where the gold is. And when you go in with that childlike mind, that openness, that no expectations, no judgments. It's an adventure. Let's see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. All right, we tried this. Yay! I'm never going to do this again. Let's go play something else, and see what happens then. So it's if you go in with that attitude, and trust me, Jeffrey fails a lot. He got, and we both do because we're always trying new things, and we talk to each other about it all the time. So and we're the first to poo-poo on what the other person's doing. But it's you got to give it a shot.
So Drew, real quick. So did you find that jazz players, when they were like the epitome of play and the epitome of, because jazz sessions it's all about improv.
Oh, yeah. And it's like a thing that comes out of improv, like in building on what we're saying here. It's not only just fail, it's like just being present in the moment.
Yeah.
So that you're open and attuned and you're listening and you're not trying to. And so that seemed to be what was coming out when musicians talk about, I'm sitting down with people I've never played with before. And all of a sudden we hit this groove and then he does this and then I answer with that. And I was talking to one person who was like, I like to sort of like look at what the guitarist, look at the guitarist's hand. And he had played like a wind instrument. And he's like, and then one time I was actually doing it through a trombone. And so I was able to look at, and he's like, in this weird thing, all of a sudden I was in sync with them, and I bet you if they did studies, they could show like their heart rates are probably something.
Oh, wow.
Their sine waves in their brains or something. But so that was just like magical, and this
Very cool.
idea of like getting at what you're saying about failures, like, and like I was looking at Rona's book and it's things like this, and how you help people get past that fear. How do they feel safe and encouraged and sort of rewarded for taking that risk of like, I'm gonna say something that might be stupid, or I'm gonna try something I don't know what's gonna work out or not. But like that's where you're gonna get to that new thing, as opposed to like, I'm just so scared, I'm waiting for, you know, the boss to go, this is what I want to do, and they're like, okay, let's back that, you know. And
Thank you for reading the book.
Getting people.
So,
Yeah.
so how do you, so what you just talked about, saying something and saying it wrong right now. And we just talked about it in a little quick podcast we did on people punishing people for what they say, and people are just so afraid. And so you talk about creative leadership, and for somebody, I mean, what could you do to support, what could you say to a leader to add more play and allow more mistakes? I mean, God, if you say the wrong thing, it's straight to HR and then straight to HR hell.
Oh, right. Some of the things I think about in terms of like how you do, like, because the thing I'm most fascinated by leadership in a creative capacity is sort of like on two fronts. One is you're leading a team or a company or a group to do something creative, like make a game, so, and I like to argue, if you're trying to do something creative, you're getting into the unknown. Because if you know exactly what you're doing, that's not creative at all. You're just checking boxes. So part of like the risk of doing creative work is like, it might not work out. And so there's that part of creative leadership, like how do you lead a team trying to do something you're not 100% sure? You've got like your processes and stuff like that, but maybe the game's not going to be, a good aphorism, I think it's from the film industry, is like, takes just as much work to make a bad film as it does a masterpiece.
Yes.
They're working just as hard trying to make those decisions, and over here you get slop, and over here it's the best thing
magic
ever. You get the magic, like Disney has that thing of like, how do you make the magic happen and stuff like that. And there's a great conference that's sort of on a hiatus called Duster Magic, and it was off of that Disney quote. It's sort of like, how do you get the magic and not the dust?
Good point.
And then the other thing I think about creative is like, how do you become more creative so that you encourage this? So I think, so how do you exemplify and model like that sort of openness and creativity and sort of willingness to let somebody else go take the lead? And a big thing I think about with leadership is it's more about responsibility than being the boss. It's like leadership is like, you're responsible for your team. How do you help them be successful? How do you help them bring their best games into the mix? Because that's only gonna, like, the team's gonna do it better than I could do anything by myself.
Right.
And so like in that sort of, anytime you're doing that, you two know this, it's like, I got programmers and artists and designers and musicians and a client, and we're getting everybody in the mix. And how do you get them to feel comfortable to share, even though the programmer wants to go, well, my code's obviously the most important thing.
Yeah. With all the research, how do you know when to stop? And then,
Well, that's
to
so
move
interesting.
on.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's so many
Yeah.
different definitions and arenas of play.
Like, it's sort of like, it's my favorite sort of way of sort of like improv and yes and at a certain point, you have to say, no, we're done. Because, perfect's the enemy of done.
Yes.
Stuff like that.
Right.
Or perfect's the enemy of good enough, or whatever, those sort of aphorisms. Because so it's like, to me, it's like an art where you just like, what are your goals? And then into that same, like what we try to do, like similarly, like in our program at the Entertainment Technology at Carnegie Mellon, everybody goes through improv. And it's not so that they're better actors or actresses or better comedians, but getting to think about how they play together, how they, how they yes and support each other and make their partners look good. And then we hope that translates into, when you're doing improv on the stage, it's like, we're serving this narrative that we're creating live, and it's visceral when things aren't going well. And it's amazing. It's magic when things are. It's like, so now you're trying to make a game. That goal is the narrative you're serving. So how do you serve that together? And so then we try to use that and sometimes it's got to get out by Christmas. And so you start making those decisions to like, we're going to do it. And maybe you're fortunate. You've seen some companies do it. Like, we're pushing it out a year because it'll be better.
Right.
Or they're like, well, no, we're going to cut. This is a weird thing now with digital distribution. You can release beta and you can do
right.
updates. And You know, we have some musicians going like, well, here's my mixtape that's going to be my album. So you kind of get to listen to it for a couple of years as they continue, you know.
And they get feedback.
That's fun.
Yeah.
It's great.
So,
Sorry. I just got to ask this. You've got down here, curiosity, be kind, and who cares? So
Right.
it just so
explain it.
yeah.
What does that mean?
Okay. So for like I was saying, like what I hope for my students is that they're curious. Like I sort of said at the top, you know, curiosity. I feel like your life will be rich for the rest of your life. You know, the more you get to know, the more you realize you don't know. And so if you're curious about how things work and how things, you know, both in terms of people and their relationships and just like solving a technical problem, but just like having that type of curiosity to like learn things about the world is like amazing. And so it's like, how do you engender that in somebody to like, well, ask those questions and understand these things. And if you don't, figure out how you can. You know, maybe you need to read something. Maybe you need to talk to somebody. Maybe you need to just like go figure it out yourself. Like I remember, it's so interesting. We'll date ourselves. I remember being able to. I had a pickup truck when I was in high school, and I could sit in the engine and see what wasn't working because it was just this big old combustion engine. And I could go, there's the thing I have to replace. And now I have a hybrid car, and you open it up and they're like, well, there's a computer attached to that somewhere, and I don't know, it doesn't look anything like I could do anything to it, you know. And so it's like I kind of try to get up on some of the things of what's going on, but it is fascinating how, you know, you could learn how things work, learn how to make things work with people and the processes and stuff like that. So that I'm like, I hope that you'll always want to ask questions. That's a pilot. Like, it breaks my heart because most of our students are grad students, and some of our students go, "Well, I just don't read." I'm like, at all, you know. And, you know, and then you can't, I do a lot of texting and I do social media, so I'm reading all the time, but they don't read a book or they don't read articles or they don't read, you know, I'm like, that's like the major way I learn stuff.
Oh, exactly. And I
different
think
strokes for different folks, but you know.
But
And
speaking
I see your bookcase behind you.
I never read. I think they are losing some, the new generation. They're losing some because it can't get lost in a book like we used to have the opportunity to before all this digital.
So how do you push now? You're the editor-in-chief of Play Story Press. So
Correct.
How did that come about? And in 2.5 minutes, how did that come about? And so you only publish books that have to do with play?
I'm glad you brought that up, Rona, because I didn't think you would. I thought you were too shy to bring it up.
I know. Well, because I go off on a tangent. So.
Well, it's sort of like I started like really short. I started an open access imprint at Carnegie Mellon called ETC Press, and we were very curious about publishing in the area of games and theme parks and the stuff that we cover in our program, but there weren't really forums to publish at the time. And at the same time of that sort of topical focus, I had this philosophy that, you know, it's very big of doing open access publishing. It's like, how could we do it so that we're more interested in influence and sharing knowledge as opposed to it's behind a paywall or you have to pay, you know. So really curious about that. So building on that while I was doing my study, I was like, this community of people are amazing. How do I do something with a press that's more community run and community focused, even more so? And so that led to Play Story Press. CMU was amazing. They were very supportive. They were like, well, that's our name though, ETC Entertainment. You know, that's ours. So you got to have a new name. So it's like Play Story Press, and we rolled it out as a sort of, and we started. What blew my mind is at the same breath of, you know, the interviews are inspiring me when I start talking to people about like, what if I did this thing where I'm asking your organization to be part of it? Everybody said yes. We have over 24 nonprofits going, how can we support it? How can we help? It's really interesting. It's open access. It's community run. So people are giving us this stuff. And we went even broader because we're sort of like, it's anything about play and stories, which is kind of everything. But it's also just sort of like looking at like using an advisory and our consortium people and like partners. Like not only did we, publish a version of Rona's book, we partnered with the Playful Mind Project because we're very curious about the expertise she's developed with her group there, and if anything we can do to help her share that out, not just her books, but maybe something else comes out of the Playful Mind Project. And so stuff like that where we're just like, how do we, and the response has been just phenomenal, and people are like, how do we play? Which just feels amazing.
Harvard Business Review. Harvard Business Review. Look out! You've become passé. It is now Play Story Press.
Right, Play Story Press is it.
Well, and I do think it's like the future of like how we share. Yeah. I'm totally there.
Yeah, and because I know that Lisa and David have their stuff with you too.
Yeah, and same
professors
things like they do the
to-
stuff, but we're partnering with professors at play because we're curious about their community and what they're doing.
They have a big
work, and
community,
how do we
too.
help share that?
Oh, that's
yeah.
fantastic. That really is exciting too.
So yeah.
Yeah.
See what else you do.
It's been just humbling and exciting.
That's so how do people get in touch with you and tell us the website so our listeners and viewers
Well,
can
you can
connect
if
and-
we're like playstorypress.org is the website, and you can find me there. My email is just drew@playstorypress.org. I am a dinosaur when it comes to social media. I'm not on any. I prefer this type of socializing. Even better if we were in person. And so playstorypress.org is where we are. My personal website is waxeb.com. It's like the moon waxes, the tide ebbs. Waxeb.com. You can find all the crazy stuff I've been up to. And I'm at Carnegie Mellon. You can find me at the Carnegie Mellon.
or just LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn.
Oh, I am on LinkedIn. I used to have like a Rolodex. It's weird because that was what it was. Now people are always just like, play this game with me and do this. I'm like, wait, I just know I've got Rona in there. I know how to get in touch with her.
That's
Absolutely.
pretty
That's
much
what I
don't
need
have
it
time-
for.
Yeah.
I have a life, damn it. I can't spend the whole time on LinkedIn. Oh, anyway.
Oh my God.
Anything else? Any closing things, Jeffrey?
No, this is just fantastic. And you want to hold your book up, show them a Play Story Press project, or do you have to get up and leave the scene?
No,
Oh,
I don't have Rona's book right with me.
We had a
Okay,
whole podcast.
that's
Yeah,
okay.
show anything.
that's okay.
It doesn't have
No,
to
you
be
can go.
mine.
What's
This
this
is
one?
sort of like both.
Well played.
nice.
For
This
the
is
love
kind
of the
of
game.
like well played is a concept I developed with a bunch of colleagues around the idea of like video games deserve to be treated seriously like literature.
Right.
And so it's sort of like, how do you do a close reading or a close playing of a game? So this is a series of books, and there's a journal now, and we do events where we do it live. And this one was specifically focused on like, what's a game that you would love? That's just like, oh my God, this game. You know?
Right.
And so it's like a lot of people just like really unpacking why they think that game's special, what works about it.
Well, you
So I
know,
love
and
doing stuff
and
like
it'd
that,
be
too.
interesting to take it one step further. I bet you could take those games and make them purposeful for business.
Yeah.
Why are people? We should. That is something we can talk about. Is why is this game? What's to debrief. We can talk about it off because Jeffrey's going. We have to go. I have to edit this. But it's because it's like what do employees learn when they play this game? How to how to collaborate? How to do this? What are the emotions? Blah blah blah. Okay, I'm done. So I digress once again. Okay, Drew, thank you so much for being on
Thank you
here.
both.
This was so much fun.
Fabulous.
Will you please come back?
Yes.
After-
Oh, of course, whenever.
Okay. Tomorrow. We'll talk to you tomorrow. That is it for us. I'm Rona Lewis.
I'm Jeffrey Hansler.
And this has been Biz-Souls. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Dr. Drew. See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
And scene.
You've been listening to the Biz-Souls podcast with your hosts, Rona Lewis and Jeffrey Hansler. Did you have fun? Subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Talk to you next week.